Just take a scan here. You can see another stone just split in half. Definitely looks like war damage, but it's always possible that's vandalism. Somebody might have taken a sledgehammer to it during the Third Reich. There's a large central complex of some kind. Also kind of broken up. Could be some rabbi. There's an urn, stone urn, a few of those actually. So, you know, I don't see the traditional Christian symbols here of, especially like the ones we see in America, of like a willow or angels or a skull and crossbones, of course, none of that. I didn't even see that in the Christian cemeteries out here. Those are maybe specific to New England and England itself. I'll be in London later on, and I'll look for some of that, see if I can see any similarities between English and New English. New English a term? I don't even know. New Englandish. More Burkharts. Died in 1885 and 1900, respectively. All toppled over here. I should back up just so see all these toppled stones. That to me looks like vandalism. All toppled stones in front of me. Reichenheim. This is kind of striking from the side, just this sort of giant globe looking thing. Let's see what this is about down here. Lion. Looks like a temple, like a synagogue. Max Liebermann, 1890. Some good bird content in here, I gotta say. So, of course, the common practice is to put stones on top of the grave when you visit. And the Cohens here, Meyer Cohen, have had I have grave concerns out here in the Jewish cemetery at Schönhauser Allee, which was the last major cemetery inside the city walls, essentially closed by the 1880s. Just looking at a particularly striking grave, Franziska Ginsburg, large compared to some of these others. So we're going to see a mix of things here in terms of preservation or appearance. There is a lapidarium, a little stone museum, some of the older stones that have been taken inside and preserved. But as you can imagine, the cemetery has gone through a lot of damage during the war, both from bombing and from vandalism. And it's old, being closed in 1880 to new plots, essentially. It's got a lot. And then the other thing is there's a practice here, and I'm going to just turn around so you can get a look at the whole place. There's a lot of beautiful ivy here. The practice in Jewish cemeteries, at least around here, is to kind of let nature take over after so many years. And compared to the largest cemetery, which is the one that opened up after this one, this is relatively cleared out. But I've seen a lot of Jewish cemeteries that are just completely overgrown. So that's not really neglect or lack of care. That's just a deliberate practice of, keeping the stones and the plots available during people's lifetimes and their families' lifetimes, of course. They're already dead when they get here. But then, essentially letting nature reclaim those plots. And a lot of the writing here, of course, is in Hebrew, but not all of it. So there are people who died here after 1880. In fact, I read something at the beginning that said the last person was buried here in 1970 or in the 70s. So it's just that, they were established. Here's some beautiful gold lettering in Hebrew, which reads right to left, if you don't know. I did study Hebrew a while ago, but barely got past the alphabet, and I've forgotten. It's pretty tough doing that right to left reading. Here's a good example of war damage or vandalism, one or the other, but serious damage over here. Looks like ancient ruins. So yeah, there'll be no attempt on my part to read any of this Hebrew. Those days are over, or I'll have to study again if I want to make any attempt. But of course, this whole place has its own aesthetic beauty. And I don't really know of any prominent people in here, with the exception of one, and I won't even mention him until I find him. And right now it seems like I've got the place to myself. It's midweek, middle of the afternoon. Nobody's here, except maybe a caretaker or two. And I'm wearing a kippah, a little head covering, which they always give you at the entrance. So it's not like I walk around with head covering. Like a lot of cemeteries, it's got the crypts along the wall and the memorials along the wall, like Family Jacobson here. But fantastic ivy. That's true of this cemetery as well as the one in Weissensee, which is much larger. I want to say it's the largest Jewish cemetery in Europe. And that tells an interesting story. I think a story a little different than this one, which is essentially a 19th century graveyard. Just going to swing around here to take a look at this beautiful carving. The Hirschfeld family. And so the story that the largest cemetery tells since it essentially opened in, oops, I've lost my kippah on the ground. That happens. Let me go. To me, the story of the Jewish people in Berlin is told in these cemeteries, especially the other one, which was essentially active during the war. And what you see there is a bunch of graves that essentially stop appearing after 1939. And more than any other memorial, that tells this story of betrayal of people who were a large part of this community, who were murdered. All the people in that cemetery, those are the parents and the grandparents and the ancestors of the people who were murdered by the Nazis. And that to me tells the story much more than any memorial in the city center. There are soldiers from World War I who thought they were being loyal to their country, who were all betrayed. And the graves do resume there after the 40s, more really after the 50s. I didn't see too many from the 40s in there. But this place predates all of that. Nevertheless, these are also the ancestors of the people who were betrayed. And that, to me, is much more profound than some contrived memorial. Beautiful as some of them may be, they have this stone monolith maze in Mitte, essentially very close to where Hitler's bunker was. Close to the Brandenburg Gate, sort of in between Brandenburg Gate and Potsdamer Platz. And that's an interesting place. But this, gets into the topic of memorialization and who decides how and what is done. And in a lot of cases, that's, the Germans, the descendants of the perpetrators, trying to make up for what was done. There's a lot of that in this city. That's why it's a very progressive city, because of its history. This is an interesting plot here in the center. But anyway, these are sensitive topics, especially in Germany. And I'm just here to explore the cemetery, and you can look into the history as well. The Schönhauser Allee is a beautiful road that runs north-south. It's a lot of nightlife, a lot of shops, restaurants. A lot going on here. And one of my favorite places in the city just to walk through. It's got all these trams and trains running through. It's a really lively part of town. And it would have been a great place to invest after the wall fell. I'm sure a lot of buildings were had for a lot less than they were worth. And now, of course, they're multi-million-dollar buildings. Just a mere, it's been 30 plus years since the fall of the wall. But housing in Berlin is hard to come by. It's tight here. There's more demand than supply, and like everywhere, the prices are rising. So if you got in on the ground floor in the 90s, you did well. I was broke back then. And anyway, it was never an opportunity. I've missed every real estate ship that sailed, and that's all right. It's real estate's a tough game. You gotta get in when you're young. More ruins here. A lot of Hebrew on the stones here, so not much for me to read. We're just trying to just kind of do a walking tour here, get a little sense of the aesthetic. This is really, this is on Schönhauser Allee. It's a very densely built up neighborhood, so there's apartments all around the perimeter here. Just give you a sense, you can see People have balconies overlooking this place. And like all cemeteries, it's walled off and locked at night. And if you're come to look at a Jewish cemetery, you got to keep the Sabbath in mind. They usually close around 1, 2, 3 o'clock latest on Friday. Pringsheim. And then they don't open again until Sunday. So I just find, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, best time to come. Mendelssohn. Not the composer. I've already visited the composer's grave. There's also the biologist, Mendelssohn, but I don't know where he's buried. Simon. There's some beautiful script. Goldschmidt, essentially goldsmith. And this is interesting. It has the Hebrew or the Jewish year, 5541 to 5613. I don't know what the current Jewish year is, but that's, Rosh Hashanah, I believe, is in September. So you can always Google it, but if you're paying attention around September, you'll hear, it's September or early October, you'll hear the Jewish New Year. And here's a good example of the overgrowth to my left, where you just can't even access it anymore. So this is going to be a very old part of the cemetery in the center here. Very forested, much more forested than any other of the cemeteries I visited. Loads of trees, so part of that nature takeover. Burkhart's. There's another one that just looks like Roman ruins, but it's in better shape. Looks like a little Roman temple. Goldberg's. These are also just great places to walk because of the trees. It's always nice and shady in here. Not that it's a super sunny day, but quite often if I go in, July or August and it's 95 degrees in the city, it's always going to be 10 degrees cooler in the Jewish cemetery. I see some beautiful iron gates out there in the middle with no way to get to it without trudging through all this ivy and overgrowth. Maybe you can see it here. I'll just kind of pan over. It's to the left of this stumpy tree. Just sort of beyond it, you can see some gray iron. Really nice. Here's another goldsmith. Looks like a musician. Alfred Goldsmith. Just kind of a beautiful old stone, though. Incredible patina. You can see some of the damage along the wall here. People may have noticed now, this is like maybe my 4th or 5th cemetery in Berlin. You may have noticed graffiti inside the cemeteries, usually on these outer walls. There's definitely graffiti on the outside of the cemetery, on the walls, but I'm not seeing any on the inside. But, you know, graffiti is just a thing in Berlin. I don't even notice it. I've noticed it playing back some of the videos, but when I'm walking around, I don't even see it anymore. It's just so common. Had some visitors. 1914. So that could be a World War I death or just coincidence. But that's one of the largest collections of stones on top of the grave I've seen here. You can see Schönhauser Allee out there and this apartment that just kind of straddles the whole place. I love the color of this stone here. Look at these swirls. It looks like a fire. That's amazing looking. There's an example of that graffiti you can see beyond that crypt on the wall. It's just some graffiti on the building. I like this large urn, Mannheimer family. Where's my hat again? Some major damage here on the right. Kind of a pyramid. Sophie Lindenheim, 1847. A few different people here, I guess. But it's got an interesting relief in profile. Herman and Jeanette Cohn. Died in 1908 and 1899. Cohn is, of course, the priest class, though, or the rabbinical. But not every Cohen is a priest. That's just the family lineage. Only the Kohanim could perform certain tasks at the temple. That's why when Leonard Cohen played in Jerusalem, I forget when, maybe 2008, he said the prayer of the Kohanim. And of course everybody loved it. That's a really cool looking crypt with this draped stone over the casket. There's a whole crypt with, I don't want to say they're toppled stones. I think that's just the way. And this is the guy I was looking for, so that's perfect. This is probably the most prominent person here. Max Liebermann, the impressionist painter. 1847 to 1935, and his family. Louis, Martha, Philippine. Looks like Louis and Philippine might be his parents, and Martha, his sister. And he has the grave of honor stone from the city. So there we go. I had a feeling I'd find it because this place just isn't that big, and I was actually coming about back to as far as I got in here. I'll just take a step back so we can see that whole crypt. So look up Max Liebermann's paintings if you've never seen. He was, of course, a world-class artist and probably the foremost German impressionist. There are some that are a bit different. These kind of Roman columns on the left. Very romantic, which was the style of the day. Well, they're neoclassical, but the fact that they're designed to look like ruins, that's more the romantic side. I'm surprised, I don't know, I didn't really notice, but I didn't see a lot of individual stones placed at Max Liebermann's grave. I'm guessing they cleaned them up. They probably get a lot. And that's why, too, it really depends when you visit these places. I'm at the beginning of the summer. But when you come at the end of the summer, when everybody has been to the city over the course of the summer, then things are a bit different. This is beautifully shaded here. This is interesting here, the way this stone, the tree has grown around this broken stone. Actually, it's not broken, it's just a bit toppled. But that's a great example of nature being allowed to take over. Well, I think I might be getting hit by some rain pretty soon, so just as well. Time to pack it up.